It's a bright sunny day here in Vancouver, so you know what that means. There is indeed a set of leaf blowers going on outside again, so I apologize if you do hear that, and that noise bleeds into the commentary audio over here. But the reason we're making a video about this topic now is because I didn't really know this was a thing until yesterday when researching topics to make videos on. We're talking about the Montreal Canadiens again, and we're talking about Shea Weber, the de facto captain of the team, again. This time we're not talking about any hypothetical trades, oh, it's Arizona, oh, it's Minnesota, oh, he's going to go out there and fetch a whole bunch of assets, or the Canadiens are going to shell away assets to trade his contract. Instead, we're not talking about that. We're talking about just the fact that Weber is technically on the team still, and some potential issues that have arisen from those ideas. If you hadn't heard, Guy Lafleur is a Montreal Canadiens legend who passed away, unfortunately, in the previous few days here. And when the Montreal Canadiens were doing their tributes to him, they were both celebrating his life with cheers and applause and giving the moment of silence as well. There was one particular name of the Canadiens lineup that was not there at the ceremony, and his name is Shea Weber. Now, for me personally, I didn't really think of this as a big deal. Oh, it's Weber, he's not really with the team right now, he's still recovering, he's still doing his thing, whatever. But I didn't realize this, but the mainstream reaction was a lot more amped up than my initial reaction was. We're going over onto MontrealHockeyNow.com because an article from Marco D'Amico 3 days ago talks about this very same issue. Shea Weber's absence continues to invoke outrage. Now, I will leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself, but Montreal Canadiens Shea Weber is retired for all intents and purposes. However, his lack of presence around the team or at any major events like Guy Lafleur's pregame ceremony on Sunday night has a lot of folks up in arms. This is where it was brought up on RDS. It was on a recent segment of Vengeance sought to discuss the absence of Weber during Lafleur's pregame ceremony, as some, like host Yannick Lévesque, couldn't believe Weber couldn't find the time to make the trip to Montreal for the event. This is my personal stance, he said. I don't understand how a great organization like the Montreal Canadiens does not have their captain present, even if he hasn't played a game all season. I don't get how he didn't come back to Montreal. The article then states that, yes, Weber is not really a player anymore, he's more so considered a contract, but the fact that he is on the LTIR means that there is a player behind the numbers, and there should be, at the very least, some consideration that this is a player that is still connected with the organization. Former coach Guy Boucher took a more nuanced stance on the subject, stating that the public likely doesn't know all the details regarding Weber and what's happening behind the scenes. I think it's very likely that this was discussed from the Canadiens' end, said Boucher. I think if Shea Weber couldn't be there, there was something on his end that inhibited him from coming. One of the things I've learned over time is that when things like this happen and we later learn the reason behind it, we all say, okay, it's happened to me in the past to jump the gun. D'Amico then writes about how one of the biggest problems in this situation is the fact that the Canadiens just haven't moved on from the idea of Shea Weber because he's still technically the captain, that there hasn't been an official address of the captaincy, so there isn't really any reason for fans to say, okay, well, he's not the captain anymore, we have a captainless team, or there's another player who has the C on his chest. It's like Weber still because there hasn't been an official statement made by the team. D'Amico then writes, at the end of the day, Weber will likely not be a member of the Canadiens organization next season if Hughes gets his wish. That wish being more cap flexibility, etc. He sacrificed a great deal for this franchise, repeatedly putting his career on the line. The player deserves his privacy, and many need to stop viewing him as captain simply because the club hasn't named a replacement yet. We also had Eric Engels, who said a similar thing on Twitter. He said this, "Put me in the camp of people who don't believe Shea Weber owes anyone anything. A bit embarrassing this has become something. He's removed from the equation, captain of the Habs only in name. I'd love to speak to him as much as anyone else, but he doesn't owe that to me or anyone else." Going back to the Montreal Hockey Now piece, there is a little segment written about the latest Montreal Gazette piece published by Brendan Kelly, how Kelly brought up the fact that Weber's presence has been lacking during this difficult season as the teams floundered without a sense of leadership during the first half of the year. Kelly points to the lack of public presence, especially towards the fans, as being particularly problematic. And so, when it comes to the Canadiens and Shea Weber not being around, as I said, this was something I didn't really realize was a problem until I started seeing the articles written about it, which is why we're making a video about it here today too. Would it have been nice for Shea Weber to be there at Guy Lafleur's ceremony? Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's going to say that would have been a bad thing, right? But at the same time, when I was going through the footage, just seeing everybody celebrate this guy, seeing the boards have Lafleur's number and his signature and his timeline and all the stuff on the ice, when I was watching the ceremony and cheering for this guy, the first few thoughts that came to my mind were, man, what an absolute icon. What a freaking legend of the game right here. Not even just of the game, but just of Montreal and Quebec as a whole. This guy was an absolute game-changing, society-moving individual. And that was fantastic. I was thinking about Guy, and I was thinking about that impact he had. I wasn't thinking about Shea Weber and getting outraged that he wasn't there. Sure, it would have been nice to see him there, but it wasn't the first thing that popped into my mind. Now, does this mean I still want him to be the captain in name, and I want him to do what he's been doing, which is not showing up at events and not being there? No, absolutely not. It would be better for the Canadiens if they named another captain. Here's a tweet that kind of summarizes it from Jeff Reed that I saw popping up on my timeline. It was kind of viral there. Shea Weber is the supposed captain of the Habs, yet he didn't show up for the tribute to Guy. It's time to give the seat to someone else, preferably someone who actually plays for the team. For the record, I like Weber. He was a good captain, but one, I didn't agree with the decision to let him remain captain this season, and two, while Weber was a leader on the ice, I never got the sense he embraced what it meant to be captain of the most storied franchise in the league. Now, that last part, you could maybe debate, depending on who you ask, whether or not Shea Weber was up to the task of being the Canadiens' captain. There were the entire set of stories that did present themselves. Oh, Shea Weber would carry his bag from the bus to the rink, and when the assistant said, hey, no, we can do that for you, he was like, no, it's my bag, my responsibility. And that was kind of the culture that Weber set for the rest of the Canadiens. You know, you do your own work, you pull your own horse. No, that's not the right way to say that, never mind. Pull your own cart, that's what it is, yeah. So Weber had this culture that he brought over from previous days in Nashville over to the Canadiens, and it was a good culture that a lot of people would praise when writing articles and talking about the leadership that Weber provided. But either way, he's not the captain anymore. Well, technically he is, but we all know he isn't. I say de facto captain every time we make these videos because that's just what it is, de facto. He's only there by name, not by commitment, by trade, by play. It's all just a formality at this point. And that's kind of why, when I was watching Guy Lafleur's ceremony, I wasn't thinking to myself, hey, where the heck is Shea Weber? Where's that guy? What's he up to? Why is he not here? But of course, I'm not going to go out there and critique anybody who is saying, oh, I'm kind of upset that he wasn't there. Like, I could totally understand where you're coming from. I just personally did not share the same sentiment, which is kind of why we're making this video here today, because I want to open the floor up to you. What do you think about Shea Weber and his absence from Guy Lafleur's ceremony and the reaction as well? That's probably the biggest thing that I wanted to highlight here too. Not just the fact that he was absent, but the fact that his absence has caused such a big deal on social media. We're seeing journalists talk about it. We're seeing articles being written about it. I'm making a YouTube video about it, which is probably going to be seen by a few thousand people. So what are your thoughts on Shea Weber? And should the Montreal Canadiens tomorrow say to themselves, okay, Weber is great. We appreciate what he did, but he's no longer the captain of this team. What do you think is the next best move? Do you name a captain right away? Do you say, all right, it's going to be Brendan Gallagher or something, or it's going to be Nick Suzuki, or it's going to be, I don't know, Jeff Petrie, just to throw out a crappy name. Not saying that Petrie's a crappy guy, just saying that it's probably not the first choice that people would go out there and say, I'm making a joke, calm down. But are the Montreal Canadiens a captainless team for next season? Do you go out there just without a C assigned to anybody on the roster because Shea Weber would technically not be on the roster? He's on the LTIR, which is a different roster. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, the link will be in the description to the article that we pulled from. There was a little bit more in this piece talking about other situations, you know, Chris Pronger, Ryan Kessler, the fact that Weber had all this conversation going on about him due to Marc Bergevin speaking up about it when Bergevin was still here. But all in all, this Weber thing, I didn't realize it was a thing, which is why the video is coming late, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.